The fluorescent lights of the Iowa State University basketball facility hummed overhead as Coach Lisa Bluter wrapped up her afternoon practice session. But what happened in the next 10 minutes would prove that sometimes the most powerful lessons aren't taught from a clipboard, but from a moment of raw honesty that changes everything you thought you knew about privilege, possibility, and the true meaning of reaching back. What you're about to see isn't just about basketball shoes or college athletics, but about what happens when someone's dreams are met with the harsh reality of economic inequality, and how one person's response to that moment of vulnerability would spark a revolution that transformed an entire community's understanding of what it truly means to use your platform for something bigger than yourself. But before we get into the incredible story that's been viewed over 1 million times and sparked nationwide conversations about youth sports accessibility, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted something so badly but had to pretend you didn't need it because of how much it cost? If that moment of recognition hits home for you, then you understand exactly what 12-year-old Maya Rodriguez was feeling that Tuesday afternoon as she sat on the bleachers, watching her heroes practice, while her own basketball shoes literally fell apart in front of everyone. And what happened next when Caitlin Clark discovered Maya's secret would prove that sometimes the most powerful moments in sports don't happen on the court, but in the quiet moments when a champion meets a dream and decides that no child should have to choose between their passion and their pride. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, make sure to hit that like button because this is the kind of content that restores your faith in human kindness. And if you believe that sports should be accessible to every child who has the heart to chase their dreams, then subscribe for more stories that prove that greatness isn't measured by points scored, but by lives changed. Now, let me tell you about what really happened in Ames, Iowa. That November afternoon that would go on to inspire thousands of other young athletes across the country. The sounds of basketballs bouncing off polished wood floors echoed through the building as Caitlin Clark moved through her post-practice routine, her signature shooting form as smooth as ever as she worked through her usual 100 shots after every practice session. The 22-year-old had become the most recognizable face in women's basketball, her record-breaking performances at Iowa making her not just a sports star, but a cultural phenomenon whose influence extended far beyond the three-point line. But as she went through her ritual, her mind wasn't on her own game. Instead, she found herself thinking about the young faces that had been in the stands during Saturday's game, particularly the group of kids from the local Boys and Girls Club who had gotten free tickets through the team's community outreach program. Caitlin had made it a point after every home game to spend time talking with these children, many of whom came from families struggling to make ends meet, but who came to games with eyes full of dreams and voices loud with excitement. As she gathered her belongings after practice, Caitlin noticed a small figure sitting alone in the empty stands, still wearing the bright yellow jersey from the community center that had been given to her the previous week. The girl was hunched over something in her lap, and Caitlin could see her shoulders moving slightly, as if she was trying not to cry. "Hey there," Caitlin called out softly, walking toward the girl with the same gentle approach she used with her younger teammates. "I'm Caitlin, what's your name?" The girl looked up and Caitlin saw tears streaming down her face, but what caught her attention immediately was what the girl was holding in her hands. A pair of basketball shoes that had seen better days, the soles barely attached, the once bright orange and white colors faded and scuffed beyond recognition. "Maya," the girl whispered, quickly trying to hide the shoes behind her back. "I'm Maya Rodriguez." Caitlin's heart sank as she realized what she'd interrupted. This wasn't just a girl crying because she was tired or sad about something small. This was a moment of quiet devastation that she'd stumbled upon by accident, a young athlete looking at her broken equipment and knowing that her dreams might be slipping away with each torn sole. "What happened to your shoes, Maya?" Caitlin asked gently, taking a seat next to the girl on the bleachers. She could see that they were trying their best to stay together, held together with what looked like layers of tape and hope. Maya's eyes filled with fresh tears as she tried to find the words. "They're falling apart," she said quietly. "I've been trying to fix them with tape, but they keep breaking. And my mom—" Her voice trailed off as she struggled with what she wanted to say. "Your mom what, sweetheart?" Caitlin asked, her voice getting even softer. "My mom said we can't afford new ones," Maya finally admitted, her voice cracking with the weight of disappointment that should never have to belong to a 12-year-old. "I mean, we've been saving up, but then my little brother got sick and we had to use the money for his medicine. And now my shoes are really broken and I don't know what to do because I have a game on Saturday, and Coach Johnson says I have to have proper shoes or I can't play." The words hit Caitlin like a physical blow. Here was this incredible young athlete, with obvious talent and passion, sitting in front of her because she couldn't afford basic equipment that most kids took for granted. But what moved her even more was how Maya was trying so hard to hold herself together, to not be a burden, to find a solution that didn't ask for handouts. Maya, can I ask you something? Caitlin said, wiping her own eyes that had started to water. How long have you been playing basketball? Since I was 6, Maya replied, her eyes lighting up slightly despite her sadness. My grandpa taught me how to shoot when I was little. He always said I had a good eye, and I've been getting better and better. Coach Johnson says I'm the best free throw shooter on the team, and I'm working on my three-pointers too. Caitlin felt her heart break and soar at the same time. This wasn't just a kid who played basketball. This was someone who loved it, who had real potential, who had someone important in her life who believed in her talent. Tell me about your team, Maya. What do you like most about playing? For the first time since Caitlin had sat down, Maya's face brightened with genuine joy. I love everything about it, she said, her voice getting stronger. I love how when I'm on the court, nothing else matters. I love making shots and hearing my teammates cheer. I love that basketball makes me feel like I can do anything, like I'm really good at something important. And I want to get really good so maybe I can play in college just like you. The simple statement about wanting to play college basketball, delivered with such pure hope and determination, hit Caitlin harder than any defensive play she'd ever faced. This wasn't just about shoes. This was about a young girl's dreams, her connection to her grandfather's memory, and her path forward to a future that suddenly seemed impossible because of a financial barrier. Maya, Caitlin said carefully, what if I told you that having the right shoes isn't really about the brand or the cost? What if it's more about what's in here? She pointed to Maya's chest. Your heart, your talent, your work ethic. But even as Caitlin said the words, she could see in Maya's eyes that she understood the truth that adults tried so hard to soften. Basketball shoes mattered. The right equipment mattered. And when you didn't have access to that basic equipment, you were at a disadvantage from the moment you stepped onto the court. Miss Caitlin, Maya said quietly, I know you're being nice, but you know that's not true, right? I see the kids at school with their new shoes and they're faster than me. They're more confident than me. And Coach Johnson always tells us to take care of our equipment because it's important for our performance and our safety. I wish I had the same chances as everyone else. The maturity in those words, the way a 12-year-old was explaining economic inequality in terms as clear as a whiteboard diagram, left Caitlin completely speechless for a moment. This wasn't just about one pair of shoes. This was about systemic issues that affected so many young athletes, particularly in communities where families were one medical bill or one missed paycheck away from crisis. Maya, can I ask you something? How do you feel when you're playing basketball? Like, what does it feel like when you're shooting? For the first time since their conversation began, Maya smiled genuinely. It feels like flying, she said. Like when I shoot the ball and it goes through the net, I feel like I can do anything. Like all my problems disappear and I'm just free. Basketball makes me feel like I'm the person I'm supposed to be. Caitlin felt something shift inside her in that moment. She'd always known that her platform as a professional athlete came with responsibility, but she'd never had it presented so clearly and so personally. Here was a young girl with dreams, talent, and heart, sitting in front of her because life had put up a barrier that had nothing to do with skill and everything to do with circumstances. Maya, what would you say if I told you that I'm going to help you get the basketball shoes you need? Maya's eyes went wide with disbelief. You mean like a donation, but I don't want charity. No, Caitlin said firmly, understanding immediately what Maya was concerned about. Not charity. This is about giving you the same opportunities that every other young athlete deserves. You mentioned that your mom works at the diner downtown, right? Maya nodded. And your dad? He works construction, but he got laid off last month. That's why we can't buy new shoes right now. Caitlin felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. This wasn't just about basketball shoes. This was about a family trying to survive, a young athlete caught in circumstances beyond her control, and a moment where someone with a platform could either walk away or step up. Maya, what would you think if I told you that instead of just giving you shoes, we're going to do something bigger? What if we could help not just you, but other kids in your situation too? Maya tilted her head, clearly trying to understand. What do you mean? I mean, what if we could make sure that every kid in Iowa who wants to play basketball has the equipment they need to do it safely and confidently? What if we could create something that helps kids focus on their dreams instead of their problems? For the first time since sitting down, Maya sat up straighter, her eyes bright with possibility. That would be amazing, she said. There are so many kids I know who have the same problem. We always have to borrow equipment or share shoes. It makes it hard to play our best. Caitlin felt something settle in her chest, a sense of purpose that went beyond individual achievement and into something much more meaningful. Maya, can I ask you something? Would you be willing to help me figure out how to make this work? I have a platform and resources, but I need to understand what kids like you really need. Over the next hour, Caitlin and Maya sat on those bleachers talking about more than just basketball shoes. They talked about the challenges facing young athletes in Iowa, the way economic barriers affected not just equipment, but also travel costs for tournaments, access to coaching, and opportunities for exposure to college scouts. Maya described how her team had to fundraise for every tournament they wanted to enter, how some kids had to quit basketball entirely when their families couldn't afford the costs, and how the best athletes in their community often couldn't pursue their dreams because basic barriers stood in their way. "We have this player, Andre Johnson," Maya explained. "He's probably the best basketball player in our entire county, but he had to quit last year because his family couldn't afford shoes and travel costs. It's like watching a star disappear, you know." Caitlin felt her resolve strengthening with every word. This wasn't just about one pair of shoes or even one program. This was about systemic change that could unlock talent and dreams that were currently being stifled by financial barriers. "Maya, what if I told you that we're going to start a program that helps kids like Andre, like you, like all your friends? What if we could make sure that economic circumstances never prevent a kid from pursuing their basketball dreams?" Maya's face lit up. "Really, you would do that?" "More than that," Caitlin said, feeling the excitement building in her voice. "I want you to help me figure out how to make it work. I want to know what you think kids really need, what would make the biggest difference. And then I want to make sure that you and your friends are the first to benefit from it." What happened next would prove that sometimes the best solutions come from the people who are actually facing the problems. Maya began describing what her team really needed, not just shoes, but a system that ensured consistent access to equipment, mentorship programs that connected young athletes with resources, and community partnerships that could provide ongoing support. "Miss Caitlin," Maya said, leaning forward with the intensity that athletes get when they're describing something they're passionate about, "what if we could create something where kids don't have to ask for help? What if it was just available? Like every kid who wants to play basketball knows that they can get what they need to be safe and competitive." 2 days later, Caitlin found herself back at the Iowa State facility, but this time she wasn't alone. She had spent the previous night on the phone with her agent, her college coaches, and several former teammates who had asked how they could help. The result was a plan that was bigger and more comprehensive than anything she'd initially imagined. Maya arrived at the facility with her mother, Rosa, a tired-looking woman whose hands showed the signs of years of hard work in the diner industry. Rosa's initial skepticism about her daughter getting special treatment quickly turned to amazement and gratitude as Caitlin explained what she had in mind. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Caitlin said, sitting across from Rosa in the facility's small conference room, "what I'm about to propose isn't charity in the traditional sense. What if we could create a program that ensures every child in Iowa has access to proper basketball equipment regardless of their family's financial situation? And what if we could involve local businesses, schools, and community organizations in making this sustainable?" Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Miss Clark, you don't understand how much this would mean to families like ours. My daughter talks about basketball nonstop, but I lie awake at night wondering how we'll ever afford the equipment she needs to stay safe and competitive. Mrs. Rodriguez, I want you to know that Maya isn't just a beneficiary of this program. She's going to be one of our youth advisors. I want kids like Maya helping us figure out what really works and what young athletes actually need." The plan that Caitlin had developed over the previous 48 hours was ambitious but practical. The Every Shot Counts program would operate through partnerships with local sporting goods stores, schools, and community centers. Rather than creating a separate distribution system, they would work within existing infrastructure to ensure sustainability and community buy-in. The program would provide basic basketball equipment for children whose families qualified for free or reduced school lunch programs, mentorship opportunities that connected young athletes with college players and coaches, scholarship opportunities for travel and tournament expenses, and leadership development programs that taught kids about financial literacy, goal setting, and community service. The next Saturday, Maya found herself standing in the largest sporting goods store in Des Moines, her eyes wide as she took in the wall of basketball shoes that seemed to stretch infinitely in both directions. But instead of feeling overwhelmed or intimidated, Maya felt something she'd never experienced before in a basketball store: pure possibility. "All right, Maya," Caitlin said, grinning at the girl's expression. "Let's find you something that's going to help you reach your potential." The next 2 hours became a masterclass in how to build confidence through proper equipment. Caitlin explained the differences between various types of basketball shoes, how proper footwear could improve performance and prevent injury, and how having the right gear made a psychological difference that translated into better play on the court. But what Maya didn't expect was what happened next. As they were about to check out, Caitlin received a call that would change everything. Caitlin, the voice on the other end said, "This is Marcus Thompson from the Iowa State Athletic Department. We heard about your program and we'd like to discuss a partnership." As Caitlin listened to the offer, Maya watched her face go from surprised to amazed to determined. The athletic department wanted to sponsor the program, providing court time, coaching clinics, and equipment storage space. But they had a condition. They wanted Maya to be the program's first youth ambassador. "Maya," Caitlin said after hanging up, "how would you feel about being the first kid in our program to represent what we want to accomplish?" Maya's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "I would love that, but what does that mean exactly?" "It means," Caitlin said, "that you'll help us figure out what works and what doesn't. You'll get to test our equipment, attend our clinics, and help us understand what kids like you really need. And most importantly, you'll help us tell other kids that this is available to them too." As they loaded Maya's new shoes and equipment into the car, Caitlin felt something she'd never experienced as a professional athlete: the deep satisfaction of using her platform for something that mattered beyond wins and records. The shoes themselves were nice, high-quality basketball sneakers that would give Maya the support and confidence she needed, but they were just the beginning of something much larger. Word of Maya's transformation spread quickly through the local basketball community. Within a week, the Every Shot Counts program had received requests from over 200 families across Iowa, each with stories similar to Maya's: talented young athletes whose dreams were being limited by financial barriers. But what really made the program special was Maya's involvement. At 12 years old, she became one of the youngest program ambassadors in the history of Iowa sports, attending planning meetings, helping design equipment packages, and sharing her perspective on what young athletes actually needed. 3 weeks after their initial meeting, Caitlin received a call that would expand their impact beyond anything they'd imagined. "Caitlin, this is Andre Johnson," the voice said. "Maya told me about your program. I heard that you help kids who can't afford equipment." The name immediately clicked. Andre Johnson, Maya had mentioned him as the best player in their county who'd had to quit basketball because of financial constraints. "Andre, how can I help you?" "Well, I'm 14 now, and I quit playing last year because we couldn't afford shoes and tournament costs. But Maya told me what you're doing, and I was wondering, do you think it's too late for me to come back?" What Andre didn't know was that Caitlin had already been thinking about older athletes who had quit due to financial barriers. The program wasn't just for kids who were currently playing. It was for anyone whose dreams had been interrupted by circumstances beyond their control. "Andre, it's absolutely not too late. In fact, I think we need players like you who understand the value of these opportunities. Would you be interested in being one of our older youth ambassadors? Help us figure out how to reach kids who already quit playing." What happened over the next 2 months transformed not just individual lives, but entire communities. Andre Johnson's return to basketball became a symbol of hope for kids who thought it was too late to pursue their dreams. His story, that of a teenager who'd been forced to quit but found a way back, resonated with families across Iowa who had similar stories of dreams deferred by necessity. Maya flourished in her role as youth ambassador, attending program meetings with the confidence of someone who understood that her voice mattered. She helped design equipment packages that were both practical and empowering, created mentorship programs that connected young athletes with older players, and even started a podcast called Hoops and Hope that shared stories of young athletes overcoming obstacles. But perhaps most importantly, Maya's family situation began to improve in ways that went far beyond new basketball shoes. Caitlin had insisted that the program provide job training and placement assistance for parents who wanted to contribute to their children's athletic success but lacked the resources. Maya's father, Jose, who had been unemployed for 3 months, was connected with a construction company that was expanding and needed experienced workers. "Miss Caitlin," Rosa Rodriguez said during one of the program's monthly family meetings, "I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for our family. My husband has a good job now, my daughter has equipment and opportunities I never dreamed possible, and she believes in herself in a way I've never seen before." But Caitlin knew that individual transformations, while meaningful, weren't enough. What Maya's story really proved was that systemic change was possible when someone with a platform decided to use it for something bigger than themselves. 6 months after that first conversation on the bleachers, the Every Shot Counts program had distributed over $500,000 worth of equipment to more than 1,200 young athletes across Iowa. But the numbers only told part of the story. The program had also created 15 youth ambassador positions, established partnerships with 30 different community organizations, and launched mentorship programs that connected college athletes with young players. Andre Johnson, the player who'd been forced to quit basketball, was now a senior in high school with a full scholarship offer from a Division II program. But more than that, he'd become a leader in his community, organizing weekend clinics for younger kids and speaking at schools about overcoming obstacles. Maya, now 13, had been featured in Sports Illustrated as one of the most influential young athletes in the country. But the recognition she was most proud of came from her own community. She'd been elected captain of her middle school basketball team, and her confidence had blossomed in every area of her life. Miss Caitlin, Maya said during a program celebration 6 months after they'd first met, I used to think that basketball was just about me getting better so I could play in college. But now I know it's about making sure other kids have the same chances I have. Those words captured everything Caitlin had learned about the true power of platform and influence. Basketball shoes were important, but they were just the beginning. The real impact came from creating systems that ensured equal access to opportunity, from listening to the people who actually needed help, and from understanding that individual stories of triumph could become catalysts for community-wide change. The Every Shot Counts program's impact eventually reached far beyond Iowa's borders. Sports networks began covering the story, national magazines featured Maya's journey, and other professional athletes started reaching out to Caitlin to learn how they could implement similar programs in their own communities. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came when Maya was invited to speak at the White House Youth Sports Summit, where she addressed a room full of policymakers, professional athletes, and community leaders about the importance of removing financial barriers from youth sports. My name is Maya Rodriguez, she said to the crowd, and I'm 13 years old. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a gym crying because my basketball shoes were falling apart and I couldn't afford new ones. Today, I'm here because someone with a platform decided to use it to make sure that no other kid has to face that choice between their dreams and their family's financial reality. The speech went viral, with Maya's words being shared across social media platforms and inspiring similar programs in states across the country. Within a year, there were Every Shot Counts programs in 12 different states, each adapted to local needs but sharing the same core philosophy. That talent shouldn't be limited by economic circumstances. 2 years after that first conversation on the bleachers, Caitlin Clark was no longer just a basketball player. She had become a symbol of what athletes could accomplish when they used their platforms for something bigger than themselves. The Every Shot Counts program had evolved into the Every Shot Foundation, a comprehensive nonprofit organization that worked to eliminate financial barriers in youth sports across the country. But the person who had changed the most was Maya Rodriguez. At 14, she was not only one of the top players in her high school, but also a national spokesperson for youth sports equity. She'd been featured in Nike campaigns, addressed Congress about sports accessibility, and helped design equipment specifically for young female athletes who faced unique barriers in the basketball world. People always ask me what Miss Caitlin taught me about basketball, Maya said during a recent interview. But the most important thing she taught me wasn't about shooting or dribbling or any of that. She taught me that when someone gives you a platform, you have a responsibility to use it to lift others up. Rosa Rodriguez, Maya's mother, had become the foundation's first parent advisor, helping other families navigate the complex world of youth sports and advocating for policies that would support working families whose children wanted to participate in athletics. Miss Caitlin didn't just give my daughter basketball shoes, Rosa said during a foundation celebration. She gave her a future, she gave her voice, she gave her the understanding that dreams don't have to be limited by circumstances. The moment that best captured the program's true impact came during a celebration that the foundation organized for its 2-year anniversary. Over 300 young athletes, their families, coaches, and community members gathered at the Iowa State facility to celebrate how much had changed in such a short time. Maya, now 14 and a high school freshman, had been asked to speak at the event. But instead of talking about her own success, she chose to introduce Andre Johnson, the player whose story had originally inspired the expansion of the program. 2 years ago, Andre Johnson had to quit basketball because his family couldn't afford equipment and tournament costs, Maya told the crowd. Today, he's a college freshman with a full basketball scholarship, and he's here to tell us what it feels like to have someone believe in your dreams when you've forgotten how to believe in them yourself. Andre's speech brought many in the audience to tears. He spoke about what it was like to walk away from something he loved because circumstances forced him to, and what it felt like to discover that someone had created a path back for players like him. The thing is, Andre said, when I quit basketball, I didn't just lose the sport, I lost a part of myself. I stopped believing that I could be good at something important. Maya and Miss Caitlin didn't just give me equipment and opportunities. They gave me back my identity as an athlete and my belief that my dreams were worth pursuing. But the most powerful moment of the evening came when Caitlin took the microphone. She'd been watching from the side of the stage as young athletes told their stories, and what struck her most was how naturally these kids had become advocates for each other, how naturally they'd started supporting kids who came after them. 2 years ago, Caitlin said, a 12-year-old girl named Maya Rodriguez taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn. She taught me that having a platform isn't just about what you can do for yourself. It's about what you can do for others. And most importantly, she taught me that the best solutions come from listening to people who actually need help. Caitlin paused, looking out at the faces of hundreds of young athletes, parents, coaches, and community members who had been touched by the program. Maya could have just told me she needed shoes. That would have been enough for me to help her. But she helped me understand that her story was part of something bigger. She helped me see that the barriers she faced were facing thousands of other kids and that we could create something that would help all of them. What made the Every Shot Counts program different from traditional sports philanthropy was its philosophy, that young athletes weren't just recipients of charity, but partners in creating solutions. Every aspect of the program had been designed with input from the young people it served, ensuring that interventions actually addressed the real barriers kids faced. We learned very quickly, Caitlin explained during a recent foundation board meeting, that what young athletes need isn't just equipment. They need recognition of their dignity, respect for their aspirations, and pathways that help them develop leadership skills while they pursue their athletic dreams. The program had evolved to include financial literacy workshops for families, college prep programs for athletes whose grades might not have been prioritized in the midst of economic crisis, and career development programs that helped students understand how athletic skills could translate into professional success. But perhaps most importantly, the program had created a model for how professional athletes could use their platforms in meaningful ways. Instead of simply writing checks or making one-time donations, Caitlin had learned to listen to communities, understand their real needs, and create sustainable solutions that could grow and adapt over time. People ask me what I want my legacy to be, Caitlin said during an interview with ESPN. I want it to be that I use my platform to make sure that talent wasn't limited by economic circumstances. I want it to be that young athletes like Maya and Andre had the same opportunities I had, regardless of what their families could afford. The program had also influenced how other professional athletes approached community involvement. Instead of creating separate programs, many had reached out to collaborate with the Every Shot Foundation, sharing resources and expertise to create larger, more impactful initiatives. By the third anniversary of the program, what had started as one conversation between a professional athlete and a young fan had evolved into a national movement. The Every Shot Foundation had active programs in 25 states, had worked with over 10,000 young athletes, and had influenced policy discussions at the state and federal level about sports equity. Maya Rodriguez, now 15 and a sophomore in high school, had been accepted to Stanford University on a full basketball scholarship. But more importantly, she had become a national spokesperson for youth sports equity, speaking at conferences, advising on policy, and helping design programs that ensured other kids wouldn't face the barriers she had encountered. I'm not the best basketball player in the country, Maya said during a recent TED Talk that had been viewed over 2 million times. But I'm probably one of the most grateful. Every time I put on my basketball shoes, I remember that I almost didn't get to have this life. And that reminder keeps me focused on making sure other kids get the chances I got. The foundation's success had also influenced how communities approach sports funding and accessibility. School districts across the country had begun implementing equipment lending programs, community organizations had started basketball mentorship initiatives, and state legislatures had passed laws requiring equal access to athletic opportunities regardless of family income. But the most meaningful impact might have been the change in how young athletes saw themselves and their possibilities. Maya's story, Andre's transformation, and hundreds of similar stories had proven that circumstances didn't have to determine destiny, and that when communities invested in young people's dreams, everyone benefited. As the program entered its fourth year, Caitlin Clark found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed since that day when she sat on a bleacher and listened to a 12-year-old girl explain why she couldn't afford basketball shoes. The conversation hadn't just changed Maya's life. It had changed Caitlin's understanding of what it meant to be a professional athlete and a public figure. People ask me if I ever regret the time and energy I've invested in this foundation, Caitlin said during a foundation board meeting. But the truth is, this has been the most rewarding part of my career. There's nothing like seeing a young athlete's face light up when they realize that their dreams are actually achievable. The foundation had recently expanded to include programs for young female athletes in particular, addressing the unique challenges that girls faced in pursuing athletics in communities where resources were limited. The Girls Who Hoop initiative provided not only equipment and opportunities, but also mentorship from professional female athletes who understood the specific barriers young women faced. Maya, who had become one of the foundation's senior youth advisors, was now helping design programs that would serve young athletes for the next generation. At 15, she had the perspective of someone who had experienced both the barriers the foundation was designed to address and the opportunities it created. The most important thing Miss Caitlin taught me, Maya said during a recent interview, is that you can't just wait for someone to give you permission to lead. You have to step up and make space for yourself and other people like you. She showed me that my voice matters, that my perspective matters, and that I have a responsibility to use what I've learned to help other people. Rosa Rodriguez, Maya's mother, had become the foundation's director of family services, helping other families navigate the complex world of youth sports and advocating for policies that would support working families whose children wanted to participate in athletics. This foundation isn't just about basketball, Rosa said during a recent family appreciation event. It's about showing kids that their dreams are valid, that their families are valued, and that communities can come together to remove barriers that shouldn't exist in the first place. The story of Maya Rodriguez and Caitlin Clark had become a case study in how professional athletes could use their platforms meaningfully. The key lessons from their partnership had been adopted by sports programs, business schools, and community organizations across the country. First, that listening is more powerful than assuming. Caitlin could have simply bought Maya new shoes and felt like she'd done enough. But by taking time to understand Maya's situation and the broader challenges facing young athletes, she'd been able to create something much more meaningful and sustainable. Second, that young people aren't just recipients of charity, but partners in creating solutions. The most innovative aspects of the Every Shot Counts program had come from Maya and other young athletes who understood their own needs better than any adult could. Third, that systemic change requires understanding root causes. The foundation's success came not just from providing equipment, but from addressing the economic conditions that made equipment unaffordable in the first place. Fourth, that individual transformations can spark community-wide change. Maya's story, Andre's return to basketball, and hundreds of similar stories had created a movement that influenced policy, inspired other athletes, and proved that systemic barriers could be overcome. Finally, that true leadership means using your platform to lift others up. Caitlin's example had inspired dozens of other professional athletes to create their own community initiatives, leading to a new generation of sports figures who understood their responsibility to use their influence for social good. As the program continued to grow and evolve, its impact rippled outward in ways that extended far beyond basketball. Young athletes who had been supported by the foundation were now becoming leaders in their communities, advocates for sports equity, and examples of how circumstances don't have to determine destiny. Andre Johnson, the player who had been forced to quit basketball at 14, was now a college sophomore studying sports management and working as a youth coach during his free time. His experiences with the foundation had inspired him to pursue a career in sports policy, with the goal of ensuring that no other young athlete faced the barriers he had encountered. The foundation didn't just give me back my love of basketball, Andre said during a recent interview. It gave me back my belief that hard work and talent could overcome any obstacle. That lesson has guided me in everything I do, not just basketball. Maya Rodriguez, now 16 and a junior in high school, had been featured on the cover of Time magazine as one of the most influential teenagers in America. But the recognition she was most proud of came from the young athletes she mentored through the foundation's leadership program. Maya isn't just a great basketball player, said one of her mentees, a 13-year-old girl who had been hesitant to try out for her school team. She showed me that it's okay to have big dreams, that it's okay to ask for help when you need it, and that there's no limit to what you can accomplish when people believe in you. The foundation's impact had also influenced how schools, communities, and organizations approached youth development. Instead of viewing sports as a luxury that only some families could afford, many communities had begun implementing comprehensive youth sports programs that ensured every child who wanted to participate could do so regardless of their family's financial situation. 5 years after that first conversation on the bleachers, the Every Shot Foundation had become a model for sports philanthropy that was being studied and replicated around the world. The foundation's approach, listening to young people, addressing systemic barriers, and creating sustainable solutions, had influenced how professional athletes, corporations, and community organizations approached youth development. Caitlin Clark had been invited to speak at universities, conferences, and policy forums about the lessons she'd learned from creating and running the foundation. But the speech that meant the most to her was the one she gave annually to the young athletes who participated in the foundation's summer programs. "People ask me what I want you to learn from this program," she told a group of 50 young athletes during a recent summer camp. "I want you to learn that your dreams matter, that your voice matters, and that you have a responsibility to use whatever platform or influence you develop to lift other people up." The young athletes in the program were already demonstrating that they understood these lessons. They organized equipment drives for families in need, created mentorship programs for younger children, and advocated for policies that would support youth sports in their communities. But perhaps most importantly, they understood that their own success was connected to the success of their communities. They knew that the opportunities they'd been given came with responsibilities to ensure that those opportunities were available to others. As the foundation entered its 6th year of operation, its founders reflected on how much had changed since that day when a 12-year-old girl named Maya Rodriguez sat crying on a bleacher because her basketball shoes were falling apart and her family couldn't afford new ones. The numbers told an impressive story. Over 25,000 young athletes had been served by foundation programs, more than $5 million worth of equipment had been distributed, and over 500 youth leaders had graduated from the foundation's leadership development programs. But the real measure of success was found in the individual stories of transformation, hope, and possibility. Maya Rodriguez, now 17 and a senior in high school, had been accepted to Harvard University with a full academic and athletic scholarship. But more than her individual achievements, she was proud of the young women she'd mentored, the policies she'd helped influence, and the foundation she'd helped build. "I used to think that success was about individual achievement," Maya said during a recent foundation celebration. "But Miss Caitlin taught me that true success is about lifting others up, about creating opportunities for people who didn't start with the same advantages, and about using your voice to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves." Caitlin Clark, who had continued to balance her professional basketball career with foundation leadership, had been recognized by the United Nations as one of the world's most influential young leaders. But the recognition that meant the most to her came from the young athletes whose lives had been changed by the foundation. "People ask me if I ever wish I'd just given Maya new shoes and left it at that," Caitlin said during a recent interview. "But the truth is that conversation changed my life. It taught me what it means to use your platform for something bigger than yourself. It taught me that the most powerful changes come from listening to people who actually need help. And it taught me that when you invest in young people's dreams, you invest in the future of your entire community." The story of Maya Rodriguez and Caitlin Clark continues to inspire new generations of young athletes and community leaders. The foundation they created has evolved into a comprehensive organization that addresses not just sports equipment needs, but also the broader economic and social barriers that prevent young people from pursuing their dreams. But perhaps most importantly, their story has proven that one conversation can change everything. A moment of vulnerability, a decision to listen instead of just giving advice, and a commitment to creating systemic change instead of just addressing immediate needs. These simple choices had ripple effects that transformed thousands of lives. The lesson for anyone watching this story unfold is clear. You don't have to be a professional athlete to make a difference. You don't have to have millions of followers or a big budget. You just have to be willing to listen, to understand, and to use whatever platform you have to lift other people up. And for young people watching this story, the message is even clearer. Your voice matters, your dreams are valid, and there are people in this world who believe in your potential. The only thing that matters is whether you're willing to reach out for the opportunities that are available to you, and whether you're prepared to create opportunities for others once you've achieved your own dreams. As Maya Rodriguez continues her journey toward becoming a leader in sports and society, and as Caitlin Clark continues to balance her professional career with her commitment to community service, they serve as living proof that when we use our platforms to lift others up, we all benefit from the change we create. Their story is far from over. Every day, new young athletes are discovering that their dreams don't have to be limited by their circumstances. Every day, new leaders are emerging from the foundation's programs. And every day, the ripple effect of that first conversation on the bleachers continues to spread outward, touching lives and creating opportunities that seemed impossible just a few years ago. The basketball shoes that started this story were just the beginning. What they represented, opportunity, dignity, hope, and possibility, continues to be the foundation's mission and continues to change lives in ways that extend far beyond the basketball court. And that ultimately is the true power of using your platform for something bigger than yourself. It doesn't just change the lives of the people you help directly. It creates a ripple effect that transforms entire communities, proves that systemic barriers can be overcome, and inspires others to use their own platforms and voices to create positive change. The story of Maya Rodriguez and Caitlin Clark is a story about basketball shoes, but it's really a story about dreams, dignity, and the power of believing that every young person deserves the chance to pursue their passions regardless of their economic circumstances. It's a story that proves when someone with a platform decides to listen instead of just assuming, when someone decides to create systemic change instead of just giving individual help, and when someone decides to invest in young people's dreams instead of just their own success, everyone benefits from the transformation that follows. And that transformation continues to this day, one young athlete at a time, one community at a time, one dream at a time. If this story inspired you, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what dream you're pursuing. If you believe that every young person deserves the chance to chase their dreams regardless of their circumstances, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove that greatness isn't measured by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you do to help others achieve their dreams. Remember, you don't have to be a professional athlete to make a difference. Sometimes the most powerful changes come from the simplest conversations, the decision to listen instead of just giving advice, and the commitment to creating opportunities for others just like someone did for you.